Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Scot Chrisman. Scott is a professional skier turned influencer and entrepreneur who is building a media and marketing empire. He works with top performers like former Navy SEALs and NFL athletes, businesses of all sizes, and entrepreneurs to build their audience, drive engagement, increase conversions, and ultimately create sales. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I'm stoked to be here.
My pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are now?
Totally. So, as you just heard, I used to be a professional skier, and that started at a really young age for me. I first got sponsored at the age of 12, and I was ranked in the top three in the nation for my age when I was 14, 15, 16. And I showed a lot of promise, and everyone kept telling me, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to make it to the U.S. ski team. And so I was stoked, thought I was doing everything right, started getting a little bit older, and I stopped putting on weight, and weight and strength is really important for all athletics. But, so with skiing, I just stopped being as fast, and I started to get into drugs and alcohol, and all my self-worth was caught up in this idea. Like, I was so young, so all my self-worth was caught up in this idea of everyone validating me through being good at skiing. And I didn't know how to be a real person. I was just a skier, or like basically a circus animal. Do the tricks, get the rewards, And so then went off on a little, spiritual journey of finding chemicals and all sorts of stuff there. Came back, went to college, realized that wasn't for me. I was studying philosophy, and it just wasn't for me. So I dropped out and started chasing the free skiing world tour. Ended up being ranked in the top 30 in the world for big mountain skiing for a little bit. Kind of a little redemption story, and then started to get injured, broke my back, torn my ACL. Just kind of this crazy series of events. Lost one of my best friends, and then got in trouble with the law, and that's when I kind of completely decided to change it around. Quit drinking alcohol 4 years ago, 4 years and 2 days ago. So that was a big move for me. And then in that time, started 3 different companies. One of them failed. One of them I stopped doing. And now I run the media house, and we do consulting for corporations. I write for Entrepreneur, Forbes Middle East, Thrive Global, just pitched a couple other publications. So yeah, that's like a basic outline of everything. Highs, lows, highs, lows, highs.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's kind of tough when you get into something young. And like you said, your identity is defined by that thing in terms of a profession or constant training. Now, with other careers and people that actually do something. So, like, I know chefs oftentimes hate to come home and cook. So, in terms of your skiing, do you still, ski recreationally or for fun, or you just like, disconnect?
I love it. I don't necessarily I like teaching if the right incentives are involved. But I don't really like teaching, if I'm like really, really honest. I love skiing, but I still end up the mindset of like push it, charge, like go hard is still so ingrained in me that I do still have a tendency to push my limits a little bit, and I'm not in the gym as much anymore. So I have to be very cognizant of that mindset, because it's so cued in that when I'm on the hill, I'm going 110%. So it has to be very conscious to like rein it back in. But I do still find a lot of enjoyment. I was a sushi chef for a little bit in Crested Butte, like complementary careers, because skiing is not always the most lucrative. You get to travel a lot and get a lot of free gear and stuff like that. Photo shoots, really cool, fun stuff. But the money isn't always there. So I totally know that. You get home and you're like, no, I don't want to cook. But I feel that passion still. So.
And in terms of kind of media and marketing, how did you end up stumbling into that?
Totally. So I never really realized that I was kind of like a micro influencer at a young age. I was a brand representative, and I didn't really I knew it all along, but then I didn't really realize that I was working with these brands. I was working with reps to help bring their product to the market. And when I re entered the scene after the whole kind of college and drugs and alcohol party phase, I realized that social media was a huge asset. And I was starting to get cued into the attention economy and realizing that when you can, uh, have someone's attention and use that to drive it towards a product or service, that you can become an asset to the brand. So I started building my social media presence. I built an Instagram. At one point, I think I had 17,000 followers. I think I'm down to like 13 and a half because I haven't posted in 2 years. And I'm just I have like on occasion, but Instagram for me was not, just no longer as fun for me to be a part of. And it was I was so I got wrapped up in the external validation thing again. I was like, all the likes, 3,000 likes, everything. And then I got shadow banned, and that I realized how much self-worth was wrapped up in it. But anyways, that's maybe a different story. But Instagram was my first real cue into um, marketing and media. And I've been, I'd skied on MSNBC and like some of these live broadcast shows, but I started to realize video, pictures, telling stories, that kind of thing is how you drive engagement. And so I kind of wholeheartedly started to dive into that to be an asset.
Yeah, I mean, content in general is important and different content types because you can connect differently. Obviously, for me, audio is superior and in terms of kind of the podcast format because audio is the only thing that you can really multitask with.
Yep.
Everybody that says they can multitask with something else, like you can't watch something or look at a picture or read while you're driving. I mean, you can, but I mean that's frowned upon and you won't obviously go the way it usually you want it to go. But with audio, I mean, you can shower, you can work out, you can be working and listening. So I think it's a superior way to consume information. It's important to present information in different formats so they're consumable at different times, obviously, different parts of the conversion funnel. And I think it's important. I think a lot of people don't necessarily use social to their potential because a lot of people, this is evil or this is, it gives you that dopamine hit. It's, addictive, but I mean, I've seen it implemented for good and charitable things. I mean, I'm active on social media, but some of my content is some of foster parents. So, like, let's say TikTok, a lot of my content is all foster related. Things I go through with my wife, things I see that I can improve in the foster care system, and I see other people just utilizing in that sense. I actually stumbled upon an account about a day ago. It's a guy in Central America. I think he's part of a church or a ministry. He lives down there and he has a Venmo. People directly Venmo him money and he just does social good. This person is losing their house. He just gets a bunch of people together, like builds them a new house or just pays the rent off for months and months. This person needs a chicken coop. Here's 100 chickens in a chicken coop. So you have the ability to do a lot of good directly, bypass large gatekeepers, traditional gatekeepers in terms of charitable organizations, in terms of media, because before, if you wanted to be seen, there was a door to knock on. Now there is no door. You're your own kind of media agency in that sense as well. And a lot of bigger accounts. So I see a lot of celebrities, athletes, they don't necessarily post at all. They can be posting, okay, they don't have to sell something, but in terms of doing social good and showing who they really are and authenticity, that can go a long way.
Totally. No. I wholeheartedly agree, and I feel like we're in the era of democratization. So we're gaining access to all of these different things all at once. We're gaining access to being our own media sources. We're gaining access to technology that allows us to communicate. We're gaining access to micro or computers in our in our pockets, and all of these wonderful technological advancements are being democratized, so anyone can have it. And I think one of the things that I've always viewed is like money is neutral. It's what you do with it that makes it good or evil. Same thing with attention, right? And so when I broke my back, I remember, you care if I tell a quick story? It might take like 5 minutes or
No,
so.
it's all good wherever the conversation goes.
Cool. So yeah, so it was 2016. I was having a pretty good season. I had gotten some new sponsors, and I was just like feeling really confident on my skis, and overall just like feeling a lot of momentum. And I was posting on Instagram on the way up. I was in between jobs, and I forgot to put my helmet on. It was in my backpack. I had brought it with me, and I got caught up in posting on Instagram, trying to tell a story on the chairlift and whatever, and like was posting and like press post right before I got off the lift, put my gloves on, had my goggles and a hat on, and skied off and skied down. Did a backflip off this jump that I had crashed on earlier and stomped it. So I gained a lot of confidence, and I was really excited. And I'm skiing down, and I hit this next jump, and when I land, it's probably like, I don't know, 40 feet out and 30 feet down. Pretty big jump, you know? And I land, and my skis sink in a lot more than I think. And so the top layer of snow was different in that little section than it was above, and it broke my ski. So I go tomahawking, meaning like cartwheeling, head over heels, and all I can think of is not my head, not my head, not my head, right? Because my helmet is in my backpack, and I'm like, oh man, like this could be the end. I'm going probably 30 miles an hour, and I know that there's this line of trees at the bottom, and I'm just like, not my head, not my head, not my head. Like, there's no way I'm not gonna hit a tree, just not my head. Like, I'll hit a tree wherever. Like, could be my femur, I don't care. And I end up smacking the tree, um, it right where my helmet is in my backpack, and I get spun around, and I'm laying underneath the tree, and like before I really kind of even come to and like check my body and everything, I'm like trying to calculate everything that had just happened, and I'm like, okay, like upstream, 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 like the confidence was maybe a little too high, like little distraction, didn't warm up, never put my helmet on. Instagram was distracting me. Like, oh man, like all these things that didn't really, I'm like, I should know better. Right. But then I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, well, actually social media kind of saved my life, because if this was different, like, and I did put my helmet on and I hit my back on the tree at that speed, probably would have been completely different. And so I had this big realization. I'm like, you're pursuing all this attention for you to feel worthy and for you to feel like you're enough. And it's like, Scott, you're enough. You need to use this attention for good, to do other things, and like stop being an attention whore or like an attention black hole and just wanting all the likes and showing off how you can jump off things, but actually do something for good with it. Tell your stories, tell people the struggles that you're going through, find ways to relate to people and create relationships, because relationships are all about relating. So I had this huge realization, and that was kind of from there forward was when I really started to pursue really the intention of using attention for good. So
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at social media, using it for the right reasons, and also it's not an accurate lens into somebody's life. I mean, it's a filter. Oftentimes, the things you see are either rented or a set. So, I mean, when you're kind of thinking about or trying to imitate someone else, or somebody is your idol or your hero, most likely than not, they're dealing with similar situations in their personal lives. They've, experienced similar things. And a lot of the things that you're seeing, number one, it's not necessarily going to bring happiness. It may for a short term, but eventually it may fade away. And two, it's a highlight reel of your life, basically.
yeah, totally, 100%. And it can be, it can be like you said, you can create a highlight reel that's highlighting all of the good that's happening in the world, or you can create a highlight reel of this is my six pack and my ass or whatever. And these are the luxury cars, and that's a choice. And I don't care which way you go, but my choice is to go in a certain direction, because I think telling my story, encouraging people to get out in nature, encouraging people to just understand that like they have the capacity to do it. Like I write for Entrepreneur and just got my article shared to their audience, their email list of like millions of people. And 4 years ago, I never would have thought that that was possible. I was just quitting drinking, had never run a business in my life. And it's like, yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in just the idea to overshadow your own expertise or your own light just because you're also like, oh, I like social media is bad, or it is this thing that's this evil monster. And there is a social dilemma. There's a lot to do with data and tracking and segmentation of groups and echo chambers and groupthink and all these psychological things that happen. But we can also use that from a neutral aspect and create positive outcomes if we know that that's what's happening, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So, what motivates you to succeed? Obviously, those motivations may have changed over time, but what currently motivates you to succeed?
Putting in the work, putting in and shipping the work, which is really like for me, um, I get a great amount of satisfaction from creating content and putting it out there. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. But I just listened to a Tim Ferriss podcast with Seth Godin. Seth Godin's one of my heroes in the marketing world. He's done it for a long time. And he's really good about what he calls shipping the work. So as long as the work meets spec, which just means that it fits a certain set of conditions, then he'll put it out to the world. And becoming obsessed with the process instead of the outcome has given me so much motivation, because it's conversations like these. I never know what's going to happen. I never know, what's going to be created from the content, but I find myself I realized that I was an artist right as COVID was hitting. And I'm like, I'm more love the process of creation than anything else. And so while the outcome's awesome and I could learn to celebrate it more, maybe for me, the process is what I've become obsessed with. And that's what's allowed me, like I wrote that article for Entrepreneur in like 2 hours start to finish and pressed submit, and it got edited and published within like 72 hours and then got shared to millions of people. And did I ever expect that to happen? No, but it just wrote the article, it fit spec, press submit, didn't over obsess about it, and it went. And that I've been such a perfectionist, and that's hindered my motivation because I've put brakes on everything. So getting obsessed with the process is now what motivates me, because if I put the motivation anywhere in the future, then it can come back to bite me. So that's, process.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of people are perfectionists, and that perfection stops them from actually getting something in the market, either a product or strategy or starting a company or what have you. And what you really need with something that may need proof of concept or just obviously content you're putting out is for it to go out and get feedback, data, insights, and then figure out, okay, is this connecting? What can I give more value? I mean, I sometimes do like these, like I said, for TikTok, 60-second clips, like literally on my little background, my little set at home about like, okay, I experienced this with my 4 foster kids, or this is what I'm feeling. When I put out, like you said, that, I pressed that it took me like 30 seconds to edit in terms of putting a headline in it. I opened it up like the next day, there's like 100,000 views and 5,000 likes. So it's like one of those things, you never know how a piece of content will connect or the impact something will have unless you put it out there.
I'm sorry, my internet, they're working on it, so you cut out. But yeah, you never know how they're going to connect or how the audience is going to respond, or what bridge is going to be created. And one of the things that I love the Tim Ferriss show. That's one of the only podcasts that I spend a lot of time listening to, just because he gets amazing guests and everything. And he was talking about childhood trauma and being sexually abused as a young child, and what that did for him, unconsciously, subconsciously, what he was reacting to out of that. And Debbie Millman facilitated that interview, and she's been very integral in designing a lot of large brands. She's like a mogul in that aspect. And she was saying she had experienced it too, and she was saying how she thought that she was alone, and she experienced it, years ago when social media wasn't as prevalent. But you never know who feels like they're alone in their experience, and when you put it out there, you give them kind of like a lighthouse, a signal, a beacon of hope of like, oh my, there's someone else out there that's experiencing it. And it could be from a parental experience of foster, or it could be from the foster experience, and it recontextualizes what it is to be a foster father or a foster mother. There's so many different ways that those orientations, perspectives can, relate or create relationships. And no, I think that's one of the most powerful things about social media and the attention economy when you're not doing it for attention.
Yeah, I agree. Seth Godin, I think before COVID, I think a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to take somebody's place at this random, like intimate, like 100-person talk thing. And I went to see him. I think like he has a lot of knowledge and a lot of like genuine expertise. And I think you can do anything regardless of where you're at and achieve it as long as you put the work in. Or people that don't know, okay, I want to have more interview opportunities, but how are you representing yourself out there? What are you doing to find them? I mean, I guess in the last year and a half, I've been on about 90 shows or so and media appearances and different things, different aspects of myself, not necessarily just digital marketing. So being a first generation immigrant, going through, miscarriages with my wife, the, foster care journey, coming from a communist country. So like there's a lot of layers to you as a human being. How are you going to show it, and how are you going to demonstrate like who you are and what your human side is? Because anybody can go on a show, a media outlet, and pitch something, a product or service, take this, hire my company. But who are you in terms of a leader, your values of that company? And if you show that, you have a better chance of connecting with the client base that can resonate with that or may have experienced the same exact thing, and you already have that connection there. And it's a genuine connection. It's not like you're doing it to sell or promote something. You're doing it to put your message out there.
Yeah, totally. And you see so many CEOs of large brands starting to create their own personal brand as well. And it doesn't matter who you are. It's so important to, I feel like, uh, understand and recognize the many facets of your personality. Like Gary Vee, I think, is really good at that, where he recognizes empathy, but also some of the analytical, money-driven side. He recognizes that he loves baseball cards and like flipping from garage sales, but he also recognizes that he loves like high fashion, or like certain high fashion, maybe it's not high fashion, but like luxury things and luxury experiences. That's what I should say. And so recognizing all facets of your personality, I think, is really important, because the business world or the corporate world or capitalism does try and stifle and kind of strip away any of the personality and go straight to numbers and analytics. And so it's like your elevator pitch is, I do this for this, for this, or whatever, and I think, you can get caught up in that. And so recognizing, like you said, you've been on, features for all sorts of different things, and yeah, shining that light on, I think, is really important. And it creates those facets of the diamond, right? It allows people to see those different facets and reflect themselves back when they see.
Yeah, I agree. And being as authentic, raw, and real as possible. Granted, there are some like subjects about a person, and I respect that if somebody comes on and doesn't want to talk about a specific thing. But I mean, I own everything, good or bad, that's happened to me or I've experienced. And like you said earlier, I think it wouldn't be fair for me not to share it, because there's probably somebody that went through something like that and think they're the only person, or are going through it now, that conversation or that segment may help them get through it.
Yeah, totally. I remember the first time I was, it was probably like 6 months after launching my podcast, and I was just sending out messages to people on Instagram that follow the podcast, like, hey, is there anything I can do better with the podcast or whatever? And I got this long message back from someone I didn't know. They had just followed me, and they're like, I don't know where I heard your story first or anything, but like, you inspired me to quit doing heroin. And I'm like sure that I saved my life by the decisions that I made. And I wouldn't have done it without hearing your story. And I was just like, what the heck? Like, such a powerful experience. And that's not what I was going for, right? I'm just like, really at that point, I think I was trying to process a lot of shame and maybe doing it on air in certain aspects. But, it was like, I was being real and vulnerable and not oversharing, but like, yeah, processing and talking about it. And apparently it impacted someone in a massive way. And that's really, the democratization of connection, our ability to connect like we're doing right now. That's kind of the gift of technology in our age. And I think, when we can utilize that, we can really recognize how not alone we are. So many of us feel so alone, but really, I think that's one of the best things we can do is realize that we're not alone.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, with other content types, you're kind of, showing certain parts of you or the brand. But, with this, it's like one of those things. If I met you somewhere, it'd be a top level conversation. We wouldn't be jumping into this right away, regardless if, we talk maybe for an hour or two. I mean, maybe, but rarely you're going about your day. Hey, what's up? What do you do? Let's connect, or we may or may not connect. And then it might be top level, like talking about business or marketing or whatever. But like some of the stuff you mentioned already on this interview, I may never find out about you if I met you at like a marketing or a networking thing. So I think getting into a conversation like deeply, I think that's one of the strengths of podcasts and kind of, podcasting as a platform.
100%. I'm a huge advocate for podcasting. And for me, it was one of the best things I ever did was start a podcast. I got to interview Olympic medalists, X Games medalists, like my idols in skiing that eventually was like as good as a lot of them. But yeah, I got to interview a lot of them. And that was one of the coolest things ever because like, uh, you never realize how other people see you, and especially when someone like that sees you as an equal or sees you as just another person. It changed something inside for me, and so yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with podcasting, with the experiences that you get, and also like you said, the ability to multitask, right, is like I've read books while riding my bike in the gym, but that's about the only other form of like inputting information and multitasking that's really feasible. Beyond that, I'm like, I don't know. So yeah.
Yeah, great. So, what's one thing that you may have seen as a weakness in yourself in the past that you've turned around and utilized as a strength today?
Totally. um this will be a vulnerability that I haven't necessarily talked about much. I've talked about it some, but I used to deal with a lot of anger. And anger for me was a defense mechanism. It was something that I didn't realize was a defense mechanism. It would just show up and I would get overwhelmed and I really didn't have many options, right? I'm like, um, uh, yeah, I was either running away or getting really angry and acting in a way that I was shameful and felt really guilty and didn't want to face myself after being that angry. And I have learned to use the small cues of anger to realize that I'm overwhelmed and afraid and identified that fear. And oftentimes, this is, I don't know, the men in the audience might be like, this wuss. Oftentimes, my anger will go to sadness now, and I'll go to grief, which is really, I think, one of the roots of anger and fear is sadness and grief. And so I will recognize that I am out of control of a situation, and instead of getting angry and trying to just like hyper control it, I'll get sad that I can't control it, recognize that, and move past it. And I used to get in my way so much with skiing, forming relationships, networking, you name it. I took things way personally. I would lash out at people because I just was in this really weird emotional space that wasn't healthy and good. And once I could recognize from anger back to fear and then back to sadness, that was one of the biggest things that completely changed my life and put me in control of my direction. So that may help people, may not.
Yeah, I think a lot of people deal with anger, and that's rooted in different things. I think a large part of my life, I was very angry based on childhood experiences. So seeing domestic abuse, my dad to my mom, my dad to other family members, him technically not. I mean, being around, but like it takes more to be a father than just to be present. You know what I mean? So stuff like that. So then I was angry and kind of like resentful for a while, like growing up, not necessarily having him as a male role model. My grandfather, stepped in terms of me seeing him in that fashion, but like holding it in and then it imploding. And then at times when you get, I mean, a lot of people understand like if that may have had anger issues, you pass a point where it's clouded and then you like diffuse and then there's like bodies in your wake that you have to go and clean up. So it's really tough to get through and like you have to channel it. I mean, personally, I pray about it, try to kind of diffuse it. And I mean, if you've experienced anger from, if you're, a man, a woman, it's one of those things that's kind of hard to overcome.
Totally. Yeah. No, it was really hard. It was really hard for me to get control of that and realize like that, yeah, to cut myself off before I was getting there. And I do think, it comes from so many different places. And yeah, it's just one of those things that for me, once I could get in control of those reactions and be very proactive in like, oh, that's a feeling. I'm supposed to do something with that feeling. There's information here. And when my, stomach starts giving me information, my chest starts getting tight. I start feeling like my hands are sweaty or whatever. I'll start putting boundaries up and I'll start walking away a lot quicker, and I'll articulate my feelings in different ways, and I'll go manage things in a healthy way. And, for me, that was really, really hard. And for some people, my mom does not get angry. And that was like, I wish she gave me that gene, right? Like, yeah, she's a saint. I think I've seen her angry like 3 times in my life, maybe more than that. But it, man, it took me the longest time to get over anger. And that was really one of the biggest things that was holding me back everywhere. So
Yeah, and I think once you come to terms with whatever that is for you, what's keeping you from your full potential, things that you hold on to from the past, things you've experienced that may have taken away your self-worth or who you truly are kind of destined to be. Once you learn to channel it and overcome it, you can really like see a lot clearly and see more of the vision that you're kind of, directed to or, towards your goals or something better, in the future.
definitely. Yeah, and I think that's one of the hardest things these days is to get honest feedback and honest perspective from other people that's not deflected or clouded as well, and also to be willing and vulnerable to receive honest feedback and then contextualize where your weaknesses are too, because for the longest time I would have been like, I don't have a fucking anger problem. Oh, that's okay, I guess. But like I would have just thrown it right back in people's faces and been angry about it while they told me about it, right? So it took me a minute to realize like, oh, I'm very blind to that thing over there, and it's hurting me. So yeah, it's kind of like Gary Vee said, self awareness is one of the best things that you can have, and when you can remove those obstacles. I like how you said self worth as well, because for me it was a lot of shame and guilt for like turning to drugs the first time and everything, and then like wanting to go back to skiing and then injuring myself again. I was just dealing with all this like I should have, like pointing to the past, I should have done that. I should have been able to do that. And my self worth was wrapped up in things I couldn't change in the past. And like, once I realized that, everything also, a lot of the anger went away too, because the anger was that I couldn't control the shit in the past that I was shaming myself about. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that in life isn't easy, and when you come to the realization, some people don't. I mean, some people, it's kind of one of those things that they carry around for the rest of their life, and it impacts relationships and pushes people away, and they lose opportunities in terms of jobs or business relationships, and if you can like let go and be vulnerable and come to a place where like I need help or I have to figure something out to get past this and try to not necessarily even get past it because it's something that's with you. I mean, if you have a negative experience, it's like a scar. I mean, that scar is always there, but you can live with, I mean, it heals somewhat. Like the whatever, the broken bone, I broke my wrist, okay, so I can't bend it the same way. I know it's I broke it, but I can live with it. So it's one of those things like coming to terms with it, figuring out, channeling it so you become like not affected or bound by it.
Yeah, totally. And that's kind of one of those things. It's not that the triggers are still there. I just recognize them way sooner and make different choices. I know I'm still fully capable of all that. It's not like I'm some saint who went and meditated for, 3 years and decided I'm just never going to be angry again. Now I just have better barriers in place that direct me. Um, as those signals come up, as that information comes up, for sure. And it is a process, right? And you got to reward yourself through the process when you do go through those situations and you're like, I didn't yell or whatever. like, uh, for me, I really have to actually recognize myself because, like I said, I'm so process oriented. Sometimes I don't see the fruits of the labor as like that cool. So, yeah, that's another thing for me. It was like, uh, giving myself positive affirmation for the things that I used to just be like, oh, you should just be able to not be angry. No, that's not capable for me or possible for me. So, yeah.
So what's one piece of advice you can leave with the audience, personal and professional?
Cool. Do the work and find gratitude. So like wake up every day and put your foot forward. If you're in a position to do anything in the world, show up fully. So that, like that's what I mean by do the work is like if you are, I'm thinking about my girlfriend right now who's a physical therapist at a hospital and she shows up and is a patient advocate every single day. She does the work. So whatever it is that you do the work and do it well, or at least to spec, good enough so that it can ship. And the other thing would be just like personally, gratitude is so important. Um, and for me, it was really hard for the longest time to actually truly feel gratitude. I knew that I should, when I would write it down. I have journals full of shit that I wrote down that I was supposed to be grateful for, but didn't feel it. Like pages and pages of it. Gratitude found me when I stopped trying to chase it. So when I got lost in the process, I found gratitude. And so if you're looking for me, when I was looking too hard for gratitude or forcing gratitude, it was awkward and didn't fit. When I got lost in the process and found enjoyment in it, gratitude was right there next to it, tangible. So,
Yeah, I think doing your best and taking the time or initiative to actually do something because there's a lot of people that go through 20, 30, 40 years down the line and then they wake up, they're 60, 70, and had this great idea, never, did anything with it, are living with that guilt and regret. What if? A lot of what if. So if you don't try it, if you don't do it, you're always going to have a what if. And in terms of that gratitude, for me, that constantly has to get recalibrated because oftentimes you get caught up in your life. Sometimes you get that, ego where like I've accomplished all this and, look at me now. And staying as grounded as possible will help you with whatever you're going through and help you in your business. I mean, for me personally, a lot of Americans aren't truly grateful for what they have in America. Yeah, just basic things: running water, food on the table, a shelter. Traveling a lot, coming from the former Soviet Union, where you would have to. I was born in '84, so it was when I came to the U.S. It was 1990, so I was there for about 4.5 years before we came over. So even remembering like standing in bread lines with my mom for like 4 or 5 hours, hot water being shut off at night. So like you have all these liberties that you don't consider at all here, that people are just wishing to have across the world even today. So it's just like really thinking about it. I think travel for me really opened up my eyes, and when I go away, it makes me more grateful for the things I have, and just the freeness of what we have in the United States.
Yeah, definitely. No, I feel like yeah, we aren't grateful. And like you said, ego, I honestly think that ego is it's the biggest thing that gets in the way of everyone's forward progress. And it's the thing that tells you that you're not good enough, or the thing that tells you that you're too good to engage in right now, right? It's the thing that tells you that you are not good enough to show up for the work, or too good to show up for the work. And it's the thing that shields, is the number one thing that I look for in people that I work for or work with, is if they value themselves without being egotistical. If they can understand and quantify the value that they bring to the table without having to project or take any self worth from me in that situation, then I can work with them. If they can say, "This is who I am. This is what I can do," and can we work together? Ask that question, right? That's the type of people that I want to work with. But yeah, ego is just, it's the thing that makes you not do the work, you know?
Yeah, great. So I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you?
Yeah, totally. So I'm not really on Instagram much anymore, but Scott spelled one T dot J dot Chrisman, or Facebook, Scott with one T, Chrisman, Chrisman, or you can email me, Scott at themediahouse.co, or my website. We've got some digital marketing tools that we give for free if you give us your email, but I prefer in-person connection. If you want to get the digital marketing tools, go for it, but hit me up, say what's up, have a conversation, get to know me a little bit. That's what I'd prefer.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me.